Hello and welcome to our presentation on the Renaissance and the Reformation. Today I'm going to talk about the causes and effects of both the Renaissance and the Reformation and what that means for us today. So I think it's important to note when we're talking about the Renaissance that the word Renaissance means rebirth. And this is important because it references where the Renaissance is coming out of. And that's the Middle Ages, or the Dark Ages, as we sometimes call it. So during the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, we know that there's a lot of superstition going on. It's very religious. There's not much education that's happening. But the Renaissance changed that. They re-looked at science. They were newly interested in scientific discoveries, which was once seen as witchcraft in the Dark Ages. Next, it's important to note that the Renaissance started in major cities in Italy. This is because of trade routes that I'll sort of talk about in a minute. Next, it's also important to note that Europe was recovering from the bubonic plague, so the population was growing. There had been a massive decrease in the population, and now they were procreating again. More people were being added to the society every day. So this had a tremendous effect on both the Renaissance and the Reformation. We'll get there. Next, there are three primary ideals that came from the Renaissance. First is secularism. Secularism means to be non-religious. So it's not that it's anti-religious, it's just that religion doesn't come into it with secularism. The second idea is individualism. That's that the individual is important rather than just the collective society, that a single person is important. And last is humanism, which is this focus that humans and humanity is important for its sake, not just because of God. So it's not just in the context of God that humans are important. Humans are important anyway. So those are the three primary ideals that came out of the Renaissance. The printing press that was invented in Europe, that came from China, as we know, really helped to spread these ideas. Without the printing press, people wouldn't have really had access to these ideas, so yay, printing press. However, it really is important to note that the Renaissance was really only for the wealthy. Poor people did not know that the Renaissance was going on. It was not a thing. They didn't have time to look at art and stuff because they had to feed their families. So if you were wealthy, you were right there in the middle of it. But if you were not wealthy, it's not just that you didn't take part in the Renaissance. It was it didn't happen for you. So the Renaissance only happened for wealthy people. In order to really understand the Renaissance, though, we have to go back to the Crusades, because the Crusades really set up the causes for the Renaissance. So right before the Crusades, the Pope said, "Expel that wicked race from our Christian lands. Christ demands it." That wicked race, of course, he's referring to Muslims, and he's looking at the Middle East, and he's like, "Those are Christian lands. You have to get out. We need that land." You might be thinking to yourself, why would the Pope want a crusade? That's rude. Why would you want to march in and kill a whole bunch of people and take their land? That doesn't seem very Christian-like. You're right, it's not. There were political reasons that the Pope wanted a crusade. First, he wanted to increase the power in Europe. He wanted to increase his influence in the Middle East. So sure, he's kind of powerful in Europe, but he wanted to extend that power into the Middle East. Second, he wanted to heal the divide between the Roman Catholic and Greek Orthodox churches. There was a schism that happened between the Roman Catholic and Greek Orthodox churches some centuries before that really split the two, made them sort of rivals. Greek Orthodox is the type of Christianity that was in Russia and also in Constantinople. So he wanted to sort of reunify the Christians against the Muslims. So he was like, this might be a really great idea. This might be a really great time to reunify, to bring the Christians back together, regardless of our differences, against a common enemy, the Muslims. Finally, he wanted to retake the land for Europe's growing population. So, as I noted in the previous slide, the population was growing as after the bubonic plague had sort of simmered down and left. And they were like, we need more land for our people. They didn't really need more land, but they thought they did. So that was really another reason. They wanted to move Europeans east. So I'm going to quickly go through the 4 Crusades, what they were, the years, why they happened, what happened, etc. But very brief, like really quick. So the First Crusade happened from 1096 to 1099. The Crusaders met in Constantinople. They were moving into the Middle East. They were killing Jews and Muslims on the way. They were just sort of like slashing through people, running to Constantinople. I mean, this is all very metaphorical. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So they fight, they do a great job, they win, and then they stay. And they created Palestine. So now you have Palestine, which is a city of crusaders, of people who went on a violent mission to kill Muslim people. So that's what Palestine is now. Second Crusade, it happened about 50 years later, not quite 50 years later, from 1147 to 1149. So this crusade started because the Muslim Turks they invaded and took part of the Crusader land in Palestine. They were like, yeah, we want this land back. So they took it, and the Crusaders marched back in, and they were like, no, this is our land. I want this land. It's mine. So they fought. They did really well, but they lost. So they didn't really do that well. So they didn't take back any land. They went home kind of defeated and dejected. Sad day. Third Crusade happened another 50-ish years later, 40-ish years later, from 1189 to 1192. And this one started after the Muslims in the Middle East were unified due to a dude that came to power named Saladin. Came to power, unified the Muslims, marched into Jerusalem, took the city. They were like, sweet, Jerusalem's ours. This happens in 1187. Crusaders are like, no, that's not cool. That's our land. I want that back. This happens kind of a lot, clearly. So they're like, I need that. Don't take it. I'm coming back to take it. So they came in. They didn't reclaim it, though. After, during the fighting, Saladin was like, guys, this is really not cool. You're killing my people. I'm killing your people. How about we just make a deal where I'll keep the city, but you guys can come in. So that's what happened. Saladin kept the city, but he allowed people to come in on a pilgrimage, which basically is like a holy journey. So Christians are coming into Jerusalem to sort of follow the path of Christ and do their thing. So Saladin was like, you guys can do that. I'll keep the city. Sounds good. It was good for like 10 years. Then it was not good. The Fourth Crusade started in 1204 and pretty much ended in 1204. So instead of deciding to go to Jerusalem, which would have been I feel like, clearer choice, they didn't go to Jerusalem. Instead, they attacked the Christian city of Constantinople. They were like, these Greek Orthodox people suck. This isn't cool. I'm going to take the city. So they attacked the city of Constantinople. This severely weakened the Byzantine Empire and allowed for the Ottoman Empire to come in later. So these are the 4 Crusades. This is basically what happened. Now let's look at the effects of the Crusades. First, feudalism broke down. So we know about feudalism, we know about the manorial system, we know how nobles were kind of in charge of their land. After the Crusades, the kings gained authority back over these nobles. Next, because of all of the murdering that happened, there was some real bitterness between the Muslims, Christians, and Jews. People weren't happy with one another. The groups were sort of upset because their people had been murdered. So yeah, they were kind of upset. Third, the Byzantine Empire was weakened, as I noted, after the Fourth Crusade. Next, the interactions that happened during the Crusades from the west into the east allowed for trade networks. So new goods were coming from the Middle East into Europe as a result of the Crusades. So that's like a good thing, I think, kind of. There are new trade networks. As a result of these trade networks, there was more demand for Middle Eastern products in Europe. As a result of this, they started using credit in a banking system, which we know that the Muslim empires created. So this use of credit, as economic historians and economists sort of know, the use of credit boosts the economy. So if people are using credit, that's a good thing for the economy. So you're having an economic boom in Europe because of this. Finally, and most importantly, the biggest effect of the crusade, in my opinion, is that when the Crusaders came in and started destroying Muslim cities and killing Muslims, they found information that the Muslims had taken and translated from the ancient Greeks and ancient Romans. So the ancient Greeks and ancient Romans were really smart. They were good people. They had a lot of scientific innovation. I mean, they created like geometry and stuff. So they were really smart, and people in Europe at the time were not really smart. So, but the Muslims were. So the Crusaders found this information, they took it back to Europe, and they were like, hey guys, check out this new information. It's really cool, isn't it? It's new. It wasn't new. It was not new. It was really old information coming from antiquity, but they thought it was new and they thought it was really cool. So they took it and they used it, and that created the Renaissance. Without that information from the Greeks, the Renaissance could not have happened. And without the Renaissance, there wouldn't have been a Reformation. And without the Renaissance, there wouldn't have been the scientific revolution, there wouldn't have been the Enlightenment, and then there wouldn't have been America. We'll get there. So the Renaissance was really focused in art and literature. Next, the next thing we'll talk about after the Renaissance and Reformation will be the scientific revolution, which is focused on science. This is the art and literature part of that. So art and literature came first. It contrasted with medieval art and literature, which really focused on the church. It really focused on salvation and, works of art that inspired salvation. Renaissance art, however, was targeted on individuals and on worldly matters, even though it was still in the context of Christianity. So as you'll see here, here's Adam and here's God, and here's Eve and Adam and God. So you have this Christian idea, but it's really focused on the individual. It's focused on the people rather than the church itself. Also, as you'll note, a lot of these people are naked. You're like, why are they naked? Why is everybody naked? During the Renaissance, people thought that nakedness was really beautiful and showed true humanity, what people were really like, and it was a source of inspiration. So the Renaissance was really an interesting time, but like I said, it was really only for the wealthy. Poor people didn't experience this at all. So those are the important parts of the Renaissance. Let's talk about the Reformation. So the Reformation is, was a change in the church. So pre-Reformation, the only type of Christianity that existed basically, in the West, was Roman Catholicism. There was Eastern Orthodoxy in the East, but in the West, it's really just being Catholic. I'm sure you've heard of Protestants or Lutherans or Presbyterians or whatever. Those denominations come from the Reformation. So let's talk a little bit about the causes. First, the bubonic plague. Like all things, it seems the bubonic plague sort of kicked things off. So during the Middle Ages, the general population of, so like the commoners, the people, they couldn't read. They were uneducated, as I've noted. But they also didn't have any access to the Bible or Scripture. So they really had to take what was told to them by priests as fact, even if it wasn't necessarily true. But anyone who questioned the church, anyone who questioned the priests were denounced, they were excommunicated, and sometimes they were burned at the stake. So that's not really cool. The second effect of the bubonic plague was that, or really the first one, that's just the uneducation is really just a precursor. So the bubonic plague, it killed peasants, but it also killed everybody. And I don't mean that it like totally wiped out all of their population. I mean that it killed rich people too. It killed people of the church, and it killed a lot of people of the church. They lost many priests and many clergy, and replacing these priests wasn't easy, so they asked new, less educated, and less devoted people to come into the church because they needed priests. Finally, in addition to the less experienced clergy, the bubonic plague allowed for theories to arise that said that the bubonic plague was a punishment from God. So people became extremely religious. They were trying to say, like, man, we've sinned. We've done some bad stuff. We need to fix it. So the bubonic plague really sort of allowed for that. It also this extreme piety forced changes in Jews, as Jews were being tortured and killed, as some Christians thought that they poisoned the wells and were the cause of the bubonic plague. So the plague didn't relent faith in the church. It didn't do anything like that. It put distrust in the church, but not the faith. So people believed in God. They were really trying to be devoted to God, but they were still mad at the church. Another idea was that the scientific advances that were going on sort of in the Renaissance contradicted what the Catholic Church was saying, and this was rough. That didn't go over very well. Next is indulgences, and this might be the real kicker. So there was a friar who was walking around and selling these certificates that said, if you buy this certificate, your sins will be taken away. So this friar's like making money off of this and telling people like, your sins will be forgiven if you buy this certificate. Not good. That's not good. So these indulgences made some people mad, as we'll get to in a moment. Finally, and similarly to the indulgences, the church was very wealthy, very powerful, really shouldn't have been, wasn't a good place. Okay, so Martin Luther comes on the scene. He's a German monk. He's dissatisfied with the church. He believed that faith, not good works, is what saves people. So having faith saves people, not doing good things. He thinks that the ultimate authority is the Bible, not the priests. So it's really important that people learn to read so that they can read the ultimate authority, the Bible. Finally, he believed that all humans are equal before God. This is fairly important, but he really thought that all people sucked. So They're all equal before God, but everybody's equally sucky. I mean, we kind of believe that now too. So, he was really mad at the church. He thought that they were totally corrupt, which they were. He was really mad at the indulgences, for good reason. So he posted his 95 Theses, and he posted it on a church in 1517. And it basically stated all of his beliefs that I just mentioned. He criticized the church, said that they were ridiculous and corrupt and bad, and in the printing press, because of the printing press, these ideas spread really fast throughout Europe. So people are becoming, they're seeing these new ideas, and they're like, wow, that's right, like the church really does suck, and they really are corrupt. So, the 95 Theses really gained support from people very quickly. The church wasn't happy about it, though, clearly. So this is how Martin Luther sort of changed the game. So this is traditional. This is like the heading of Christianity. This is all of Christianity here. Christianity can be broken into two pieces: Roman Catholic and Protestant. Before Martin Luther, there was just the Roman Catholic. There was no Protestantism. It was just the Roman Catholic in the West. I'm talking about just the West. After Martin Luther, Protestantism came around, and it said different things than Catholicism. So you have Protestantism that's coming in, and Martin Luther creates Lutheranism. So if you know people that are Lutheran, or maybe you're Lutheran, this is where your religion comes from. On the other side is Calvinism, and there was this guy named Calvin who took Martin Luther's ideas and changed them some. And as a result of Calvinism, you have Puritanism that comes in, that becomes a huge religion in the Americas, or North America. The Huguenots and Presbyterians, as well as pretty much all of the other denominations of Christianity: evangelical, non-denominational, etc. So this is how the tree of Christianity looks. If you have questions about Protestantism, Catholicism, what this means, please let me know. But this is all I've got for today. So that's the Renaissance, that's the Reformation. Please let me know if you have questions. I hope you learned something. I will see you in class.